First of all, I'd like to take a prerogative of the chair, as it were. We have with us in the congregation other past presidents of the Rabbinical Assembly, Rabbi Goodman, Rabbi Hammer, Rabbi Birkin. I'd like to ask them to stand as well to be recognized by our assembly. And we want to thank, first of all, Rabbi Sandler and this wonderful congregation for being so welcoming. We want to thank Cantor Rabbi Rosenblum for a lovely Minhah. And this wonderful community, which has been so welcoming as well, gathered here, many who are from the congregation and beyond the congregation, to welcome our new president and to recognize the role of the Rabbinical Assembly in this country and around the world. And so we thank you all for joining us this evening for this very special installation ceremony and the program that will follow. And we thank all of you. My pleasure to introduce Rabbi Joel Meyers, who is the august Executive Vice President Emeritus of the Rabbinical Assembly.
Thank you. It is an honor and a great pleasure to be with you during this evening of celebration and transition. And let us begin this installation by first thanking our representatives on the Executive Council, whose term of office officially ends today. They have served us well, and we are grateful to them. They are Jacob Blumenthal, Lyle Fishman, Alex Greenbaum, Cheryl Katzman, Harold Kravitz, Arthur Levitsky, David Lerner, Cheryl Peretz, and Jonathan Wittenberg, and we ask them to stand and accept our applause and our gratitude. You have our blessings for continuing accomplishment and success. Rav Todot Yishar Kochachem. I believe all of us know that we, the Jewish people, are probably one of the most studied, if not the most studied groups in the entire earth. Just think how many sociological and demographic studies are constantly being done about us as a Jewish community. How many surveys undertaken, covering almost every aspect of our being, our communal life and our personal life. We read these studies, we ponder the data, we raise questions, we rabbis talk with each other about the conclusions, and inevitably we do comparisons. Because each of us, as a rabbi, as a religious leader, is really searching for the answer to a question which cannot be answered so readily by accumulating data. And that is the driving question for us. How do we ensure the continuity of our tradition and our people? And this certainly is not a new question. For those of us who were here yesterday afternoon, David Baum cited for us the wonderful account in the Gemara some 1,800 years ago of a discussion between Rabbi Hanina and Rabbi Chia of how you would go about ensuring Jewish continuity. And Rabbi Hanina's approach was to, of course, as we heard, say, I could do it through skillful teaching, by going out and convincing people that really they ought to maintain the values and traditions of our people. And Rabbi Chia said he had a different plan. I realized I would go out and I would plant flax, and when it grew, I would harvest it and make nets, and I would catch deer, and I would use the skins of the deer to write scrolls, and I would write a book of the Torah on each scroll, and I would find children and have them study these books of the Torah, and then I would have these children teach each other and then send them out to communities around and teach others. And that's how I would perpetuate and continue Judaism and the Jewish people. Now, I'm not sure which plan we would vote for or which we think would have the greater chance of succeeding, the Gemara appears to favor Rabbi Chia. But I want to suggest to us that really each of us does both of those simultaneously. After all, Hanina's plan is geared to show immediate results, and Rabbi Chia's plan is a long-term commitment that may produce results in the future. And so it is with us. Every day, each of us, as a religious leader in our community, in our school, in our camp, each of us uses all the skills and tools we have available. Whatever ability we have, technology, learning, personal involvement with the people around us, to teach and to show by example how important it is to continue Jewish tradition and values. And at the same time, we know that we all plan for the future. We lay the groundwork and plant the seeds. And we hope in our hearts that generations from now, the work that we do will bear fruit and will continue to be influential and continue to involve those whom we touch. And as we install our new leadership of the Rabbinical Assembly, is this not really the same approach we expect from those whom we have elected, to care for the immediate needs of the Assembly, while laying the groundwork for our future growth and strength? While they, in turn, look to us just as we look to those around us in our community, to partner with us in these efforts, to be engaged together in both the mission of increasing the well-being of rabbis and the rabbinate, in strengthening the bonds of our fellowship, and at the same time in utilizing the power of our collective as a rabbinate to be a force for good, for positive growth, and for change within our movement, within the institutions of Jewish life here, in Israel, wherever we may reside. This is indeed the pledge, I think, we make to one another tonight. We and those we elect to serve us. So on behalf of us all, it is an honor to install first those whom we have elected as representatives to the Executive Council. We ask each of them to rise and be recognized. Lauren Eichler-Birkin, Harold Berman, Richard Camras, Elliot Cosgrove, Felipe Goodman, Jennifer Gorman, Joshua Heller, Harold Kravitz, William Rudolph, and Craig Sheff. We wish you well, and we say, Hizku v'ametz levavchem. May you always be strengthened and give us always. We turn now to the elected officers of the Assembly, each of whom is continuing to serve us, although albeit in a different capacity. Now, each of our elected officers has not only provided exceptional rabbinic leadership to their congregation, they have been a force in their wider community as well. And each has also given unique service to the Rabbinical Assembly and to the conservative movement. We are privileged now to install them as officers of the Rabbinical Assembly, and I ask them to stand as we call their names and formally install them to their position. As Vice President of the Rabbinical Assembly, William Gershon. Rabbi of Congregation Shalom Israel, Dallas, Texas. As Treasurer of the Rabbinical Assembly, Philip Schein. Rabbi of Beth David B'nai Israel Beth Am in Toronto, Canada. As Financial Secretary, Rabbi Deborah Newman Kamen. Rabbi of Am Yisrael Conservative Congregation in Northfield, Illinois. As Secretary, Stuart Vogel. of Woodland Hills, California. We wish you every success, and to paraphrase our psalmist, may your efforts always be a lamp unto our feet and or l'tivotenu, that you bring light to our path. Mazal tov, congratulations. The presidency of the Rabbinical Assembly is a unique and vital position for us in the rabbinate, for our movement, and for the Jewish people. Now, for the rabbis of the Rabbinical Assembly, presidents are always seen by us as colleagues, as friends, to whom we look first and foremost for leadership to keep us focused as an assembly on our core mission of promoting and increasing the well-being of rabbis and the rabbinate. But as I said earlier, we know we also have the responsibility to utilize the power of our collective rabbinate as a positive force for good. And it is in relation to this aspect of the RA's mission that our president has the crucial responsibility of serving as our representative at leadership tables throughout the Jewish and the secular community. And it is through our president that we have the ability as a conservative rabbinate to help effect events and policies that impact the Jewish people and the wider world. Now, we have been fortunate in the Rabbinical Assembly to have had exceptional leadership from our presidents. And this evening, we continue this tradition. It is a very special personal privilege and a joy to introduce our newly elected president of the Rabbinical Assembly, Rabbi Gerald Skolnik. There is a phrase which comes to mind when I think about Jerry and his rabbinate, and that is, Ivdu et Adonai b'simcha, serve the Lord with gladness. Because anyone who has known Jerry as a colleague, as a friend, as a teacher, as a rabbi, as a mentor, as an author, has experienced and been moved by his religious optimism. Whether it has been through his more than 30 years as rabbi of Forest Hills Jewish Center, or through numerous leadership positions within the Rabbinical Assembly and our movement, or through his teaching at JTS, or through his writings for the New York Jewish Week, Jerry has always demonstrated a kind, caring, optimistic wisdom, always grounded in religious teaching and in religious values. Jerry is a devoted Zionist. Jerry is a lover of Israel. He is a lover of learning, a lover of the Jewish people. He is a lover of rabbis. This past February, Jerry and Robin went to Orlando to install their son Hillel as rabbi of his own congregation. And Jerry wrote a poignant blog about this wonderful celebration, in which he noted that with two sons and a daughter-in-law as rabbis, he had his own Rabbinical Assembly region. And as he reflected on the passing on of the rabbinic calling, he noted, and I'm quoting him, "There is still a lot of unfinished work for me to do, and I still derive enormous satisfaction from my rabbinate." Now, as Jerry assumes the presidency of the RA, I think all of us repeat back to him, "Jerry, there is a lot of unfinished work to do, and we, your colleagues, pledge you all our help and support as you undertake this vital role. We wish you Mazal Tov. May all your labors lead to success, and the path you travel always lead to satisfaction and blessing. And we say to you, Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha v'yasein lecha shalom." Please welcome the next president of the Rabbinical Assembly. Sunday, our colleague Rabbi Gerald.
Honored and precious colleagues, friends, family. Standing before you this evening as the new president of the Rabbinical Assembly is, I candidly admit, not a fantasy that I would ever have allowed myself to entertain when I was a newly ordained rabbi in 1981, nor was this a position that I particularly aspired to. My road to this moment has been an unconventional one, but more about that in just a few moments. First, I must begin by thanking my friend, colleague, and mentor, Joel Meyers, for his beautiful and wise words, and for honoring me by agreeing to serve as the installing officer this evening. Joel's abiding faith in me throughout my years of service and growth in the RA and my rabbinate in Forest Hills has been a great source of strength. Under any circumstances, assuming the presidency would make this a luminous moment, but having Joel participate in it with me has made it that much more special. Joel, your confidence in me has helped to make me the rabbi that I am. I will always be grateful. I would also, on behalf of all of us, wish a very heartfelt Yishar Kochech, a job exceedingly well done, to my precious friend and colleague, Gila Dror. By whose side it has been my privilege to serve during the 2 years of her presidency. Gila is a phenomenal woman, blessed with many exceptional qualities. She has been an outstanding president, representing us wisely and ably in the various corridors of power where her office took her, and helping to navigate our assembly through difficult transitions and financially challenging years. I am grateful to her for having included me in such a substantive way throughout the term of her presidency. And she has left me not only the legacy of an RA in mint condition, but also a much more precious legacy, a friendship. Gila, I wanted to say to you, Tavo alayich bracha umnucha. May you be privileged to enjoy blessing and peace. But since we're here in Atlanta, I feel obliged to say to you, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty you served us so well. I've been privileged to work thus far with wonderful officers. And those men and women who will be serving with me going forward are all possessed of the qualities that you and I would want in the so-called lay leadership of the RA. I'm grateful to them all. They're wonderful friends. I value their advice and their counsel, and I depend on their service and their friendship. The professional staff of the Rabbinical Assembly is multi-talented and dedicated to this organization in an extraordinary way. Working with Julie Schoenfeld, our outstanding Executive Vice President, has broadened for me the parameters of meaning of the phrase dedication to the task. In a relatively short time, she has proven herself to be a major force on the American and international Jewish scene, a thought leader, a planner, a visionary. Along with Elliot, Jan, Ashira, Yossi, and the wonderful support staff that makes the RA office operate so efficiently, we are blessed with a team that we can rightly take pride in. And speaking of pride, I am particularly thrilled to have my family the great love of my wife, Robin, who has shared this ride with me with abundant patience most of the time, and wisdom all of the time, for almost 36 years. My son, Rabbi Hillel Skolnik, who, as you heard from Joel, was ordained last year and serves the Southwest Orlando Jewish congregation in Florida. His wife, my daughter-in-law, Rabbi Sharon Bar Skolnik, is at home with their 2 children, my grandchildren. My lovely daughter, Leora. My son-in-law, Rabbi Lieutenant Yonatan Warren, who is serving active duty as a Navy chaplain in Okinawa, Japan, and was able to get away with Leora to be here. This is such a great treat. Leora, please stand. I have 2 other children who are not here. One who's a student at Barnard and is in Denmark for the semester, and the other one who's in Israel. Don't ask, it's just unbelievably complicated. And my sister-in-law from New Jersey is here, and my brother-in-law from California is here. And I'm so grateful and richly blessed. And last but most certainly not least, I'm thrilled and honored that members of my congregation my home for the last 31 years, the Forest Hills Jewish Center, have traveled to Atlanta to share in the festivities this evening, along with some very special friends. I'm so grateful. Your presence greatly enriches this moment. The president of my congregation, Joe Fox, is here, and there are 9 or 10 other friends from the congregation who have traveled here, and it is of the greatest significance that when I looked at the names of the people who were coming, I said 9 or 10 friends from the Forest Hills Jewish Center are coming here, and I didn't even immediately realize that of those 9 or 10 friends, there are 5 past presidents of my congregation. Kol hakavod. And of course, my precious, endlessly charming friend for more than 40 years, and now my colleague, Hazzan extraordinaire Henry Rosenblum. So why, to return to my opening words, is this a moment that I would never have dreamed of? The simple answer to that question is that I didn't grow up in this movement. I'm one of the last of the Mohicans. I was raised Orthodox, educated Orthodox. I'm a graduate of a yeshiva day school, a yeshiva high school, and yeshiva university. I came to this movement precisely because of its ideology, not in spite of it. For the sake of clarification, I want to share with you a story that my family and many of my friends are familiar with, but it bears repeating at this special moment. When I was an undergraduate student at Yeshiva College in the late 60s and early 70s, I had one overarching goal, and that was that I was desperate to get to Israel for my junior year of college. I'd never been, and I would have given my eye tooth to make it happen. At that time, Camp Ramah, which I was not attending, I was at Camp Masad, an Orthodox camp, albeit an unusual Orthodox camp. Camp Ramah was sponsoring a special program designed to procure staff who were both intimately connected to Israel and committed to the camp for multiple years. The camp was offering a half-tuition scholarship on tuition at Hebrew University and a $300 bonus on your bunk salary when you came home. If you just committed to be in camp the summer before and the summer after your junior year. Now, I'm going to share a little secret with you. I probably would have gone to a Trotskyite camp if they would have offered me the package first, because that's how anxious I was. But all you had to do was take 2 courses in Jewish education at Hebrew U, in the Merkaz L'Chinuch Yehudi B'Tfutzot, run by the rather remarkable Professor Mike Rosenblum, and then come back to camp. And so it was that in the summer of 1971, I made my way from Camp Masad Bet in Dingman's Ferry, Pennsylvania, also a wonderful place, to Wingdale, New York. And I began the move that would change absolutely every last thing about my life. Little did I know at the time that 10 other staff members at Ramah and the Berkshires were going on the Merkaz program, and they would become lifelong friends whom I still treasure. Some of them are in this room. On my very first day at Staff Week, when I knew no one and nothing, nada, about conservative Judaism, I barely knew, and I apologize to Josh Heller for this, I barely knew where the conservative shul was in Bayonne, New Jersey, where I grew up. And I lived 4 blocks away. A group of male staff members, myself included, were assigned to a discussion group dealing with issues related to Jewish prayer. The session was led by the eminent pedagogue and expert on Jewish prayer, the very wonderful Saul Wax. Saul opened the session by asking what was, at least on the surface, a simple question. I remember it as if it were yesterday. Who here, he asked, has ever missed a day of putting on tefillin? There was silence from the group, as few were interested in publicly admitting to the less than perfect state of their prayer life. I, personally, was stunned. In the world in which I was raised, no one would ever ask that question. It was assumed that you davened every morning and that you put on tefillin. And if you didn't, I promise you, the very last thing that you would do would be to put a sign on your chest that said, guess what? I didn't put on tefillin this morning. You would never admit to it in public and never admit to it before your peers and your teachers. And what was most stunning was that slowly, inexorably, in response to that question, I felt my arm going up. My adult spiritual life began that day in June of 1971, when Saul Wax, in a few brief words, validated ambivalence and doubt as powerful religious forces. I had never realized, or perhaps more correctly, I had never allowed myself to believe that a person of faith was allowed to question. It just wasn't a part of my religious being. It was as if someone had detonated an explosion in my brain, and all of a sudden I began thinking on a totally different level. That relatively innocuous question opened up so many spiritual avenues for me and helped me to develop the thought processes that would ultimately bring me to the rabbinate and define my religious life for so many years to come. Finally, I was able to understand that for me, the truest manifestations of Kedusha, of sanctity, were to be found in the space between the absolutes that were so often used to describe the life of faith. The tension between tradition and change that so informs the ideology of this movement with meaning. It sang for me in ways that I could never have believed were possible. I've been blessed by my parents with the givenness of religious practice and the knowledge that were products of being in yeshiva my entire life. But I became even more blessed by broadening the parameters of my religious world. Ramah changed my life on the very first day I was there. And I was there actually to change campers' lives. But it changed my life. So here I am, the person who barely knew where the conservative shul was in Bayonne, New Jersey. Here I am standing before you, my colleagues in the conservative rabbinate, as your new president. And there is an audible kol dmama daka, a still small voice inside of my head that whispers to me, what happened to you? And how in the world did you get here? And why are you here? I know why it happened to me. It happened to me because religiously and spiritually I wanted it to happen. It happened because great teachers from JTS gently pushed and prodded me to make it happen when I met them at Ramah. I remember Neil Gilman telling me that I belonged in rabbinical school when I used to stand at the door of the Ramah's primary school and welcome his daughter, who's now a PhD in Jewish studies from Yale, into first grade. He said to me, what are you doing here? You belong in rabbinical school. I remember Joel Roth teaching me about the tension between a passionate commitment to halakha and a dispassionate commitment to critical study of that halakha, and thinking to myself, whoa, that's an interesting idea. I remember Shama Friedman and Israel Frankus showing me a completely different way to confront the same Talmud text that I've been studying by rote since 5th grade in the yeshiva of Hudson County, and for the first time realizing I actually enjoyed studying Talmud, and I was pretty good at it. I remember learning about the emancipation of European Jewry and wondering, how could it be? How was it possible that I had emerged from 20 years of Jewish education? Actually, I remember thinking, how could my parents have worked through summer vacations to pay for my tuition for my Jewish education, and I emerged from 20 years of Jewish education. I had no idea what the fundamental issues were that helped to fashion modern Judaism. So I know how this happened to me. This happened because good people, great people, invested in me, like I tried to do in people whom I find in my shul. They opened my eyes to avenues of understanding and scholarship, and they transformed my world. Today, I can acknowledge publicly how deeply in their debt I am. And to respond to the other part of that inner voice, I know exactly why I'm here. I'm here because this is where I want to be. This is where I feel at home. I'm here with teachers, colleagues, friends, some of the most creative and passionate Jews I've ever known. And how proud I am to be trusted enough to assume the presidency. I'm here because I have the greatest of respect and admiration for rabbis. I believe in rabbis, and Joel was right. I love rabbis. I appreciate the work that we do in pulpits, in academia, in schools, in hospitals, in Okinawa, in camps, in agencies, in social services, everywhere that we endeavor to bring our Torah into the public domain. I know from personal experience, 31 years, how draining that work can be. The toll that it exacts on us and on our families, and the price that is paid. I also know that we change people's lives for the better. I'm here because I care deeply and passionately about this incredibly unwieldy thing we call the conservative movement. And I'm not prepared to be party to writing its death notice, nor am I prepared to declare myself and my colleagues obsolete. Rabbis are not the problem in this movement, but we most certainly do have to be a part of the solution. Only the most oblivious among us can fail to see that we face great challenges. Some of them are not new. They are begging for resolution. We need, among other things, desperately, to find a way to secure the funding of our sister Masorti movement, which is suffering almost unbearable financial pressure because of cuts from the Jewish Agency and inadequate support from us, from communities around this country. We've heard this all before, but we are at a point of Baal Mayim ad Nafesh. Either we come through or we sacrifice the precious work of our colleagues in Israel. There are, as of this evening, already draconian cuts being implemented in Israel. None of us would want to live with that on our conscience. And I trust that you would agree that Israel itself would be impoverished were the voice of Masorti Judaism, sane Judaism, to be lost from the religious arena in Israel. We need to find a way, among other things, to work through decades of mistrust and sometimes hostility, to find common purpose with the United Synagogue of Conservative Judaism as it works to reconstitute itself in the aftermath of Hayom. The demographic and sociological challenges that we face are far too grave to allow us all the luxury of turf wars and institutional self-interest. I listened last night, as I know that you did, to the eloquent teaching of Ellen Wollensfield, who struggles with her faith in the face of her children's autism, and Menachem Creditor's quest to find some personal sense of Kedusha in the writings of Chaim of Volozhin and transmit it to those who look to him for meaning. And we listened last night to Congressman John Lewis, who gloriously spoke not only of his struggle 40 years ago, but of the remaining injustices that exist in American society, in the world, and the need for us, the clergy of all faiths, to be out front, to make good trouble, as he put it. My friends, my colleagues, In matters such as these, we are no different from the people that we serve. We mirror the existential angst of those whom we lead. There's a movement out there that doesn't care about our institutional interests. It cares about being able to make it through the day and sleep through the night, to find meaning in difficult times and joy in good times. They look to us to be our best. We can only function at our best when we're not working at cross purposes. To my friends in the United Synagogue, I say to you that my job as president of the Rabbinical Assembly is to safeguard RA interests, and I will. But my responsibilities extend to the movement as well. I care about this movement. I'm committed to finding a better way. Let's leave the old way behind, create a better future for ourselves and for our movement. Within the Rabbinical Assembly itself, we need to continue the important work that has been engaged over these past few years to make each and every member feel valued and respected, regardless of how his or her rabbinate finds professional expression. Our office has made enormous strides in using technology to enhance the form and the content of our communication with our membership. I think we have state-of-the-art technology. Take one look at RA News and see how we have leapfrogged miles and miles into the 21st century. But I am convinced that nothing in this age of Facebook, Twitter, and constant contact is more important than good old human contact. And if rabbis don't know that, ain't nobody going to know that. And we need to continue to cultivate. There are other parochial interests of the RA. I know the hour is getting late. We need to develop new revenue streams. This is not a chiddush, but it's really important. And we learned that lesson in the aftermath of the economic downturn in 2008. One of the things that I'm committed to trying to do with the help of colleagues is to revisit the idea of a health insurance option being offered through the Rabbinical Assembly in cooperation with other arms of the movement. As I watched some of our younger colleagues, my own son included, working for small organizations that don't have enough employees to form a group and scrambling to find a way to get insured in America. It shouldn't be, and we should be able to help. As I'm sure you all know, we live in a time of enormous flux. Everything about our religious world is changing. Patterns of affiliation are changing. Styles of prayer are changing. Synagogue music is changing. Models of religious authority are changing. We need to be responsive to those changes. Today's Rabbinical Assembly faces challenges that are much different and far more difficult than the ones that it faced when I became a rabbi in 1981, and it is incumbent upon us to be responsive to those changes and adapt ourselves accordingly. I have no illusions about being able to solve all of these issues, but neither do I see us as being b'nei chorim lehibatel mehem. We're not free to desist from trying. I am ready to give myself over to this cause, and I thank you for placing your trust in my leadership. Much time has passed since that fateful day at Camp Ramah with salt wax. Rivers of water have flowed under the proverbial bridge. But 41 years later, I can say with the greatest of joy that making this movement my home has been one of the greatest and most significant decisions of my life. And having the opportunity to lead the RA is a privilege that I shall do everything in my power to be worthy of. Together with our wonderful and able professional staff, I am confident that our Rabbinical Assembly can continue to be a vital and indispensable agent in the challenge of once again making our conservative movement a brand to be proud of. Yehi Ratzon she'tishresh bina b'maaseh yadeinu. May God's presence be with us. Thank you.
I know I speak for all of us when I say to Rabbi Skolnik that was not only a very emotional and touching talk, but a very beautiful and uplifting talk. And I know that the future Rabbinical Assembly is in very firm, steady, good, and worthwhile hands. And we thank him. Before she leaves the Minhah this evening, it's my pleasure to be able to say a word about Rabbi Gerald, our outgoing, and I mean that in all the meanings of the word, president. Outstanding president of the Rabbinical Assembly, a wonderful model to all of us, and a singular leader for the conservative movement. It is important for us to note that, as she noted for us yesterday, she wears many feathers in her cap, but beyond the distinction of the presidency of the International Rabbinical Assembly, and beyond the distinction of having been the first female rabbi to serve a congregation in Eretz Yisrael, in Israel, she was the first president of our Rabbinical Assembly in Israel, and she sees that as the greatest of distinctions, and we do too. We're proud of you, we're indebted to you, and we are grateful to you. You have earned the respect and the admiration of all of us and many more far beyond this congregation this evening, and we congratulate you literally for the fact of your leadership and the significance of it, for we are all touched by it in many ways. We this evening want to present you with a small gift. It is a reminder to you of the very emotion and wonderful feeling that we have for you. And I know that I speak for all of us when I recognize you, and I quote and adapt a very well-known saying which says, Ein mamidim parnas tov al ha'ida milmata, elaim kein machrizim alea milmala. That only when there is a great voice in heaven that speaks out to us do we have the authority to stand someone before us as a leader, as we have done with you. So I'd like you, please, to come forward, and Rabbi Skolnik, if you would do so as well. And we have for you this very beautiful yad with the plaque that says, you mikabel et kol ha'adam b'sefer panim yafot, that you should receive everyone with a wonderful face, which you do. Presented to Rabbi Gerald, 2010 to 2012, President of the Rabbinical Assembly, with deep appreciation and gratitude, our Rabbinical Assembly. tradition in the Rabbinical Assembly, and that is the transfer of a Torah mantle, which resides with the congregation of the President of the Assembly during the period of that person's presidency. And so I would like to invite Mr. Joseph Fox, who is President of the congregation of Forest Hills, to please come forward. I do, all right. This is the Torah mantle of the Rabbinical Assembly with our logo, and we are delighted to be able to give it to you for the term of presidency of Rabbi Skolnik, so that whenever you open your Aron Kodesh, you will be able to be reminded as a congregation of the significance of our relationship and Rabbi Skolnik's leadership.
Thank you. On behalf of the Forest Hills Jewish Center, its members, trustees, past presidents, many of whom are here, and over 80 years of a wonderful and vibrant, traditional, conservative Jewish community, I thank you, and I proudly accept the Torah mantle, which will be prominently housed in our magnificent Schick Ark. This is an honor for our rabbi and our entire community. During our existence, we have been blessed to have only two rabbis, Rabbi Ben Zion Boxer of blessed memory and Rabbi Gerald Skolnik, each in his own way a standard bearer of our movement, committed to change, yet an undiminishing respect for our tradition. These past 31 years, we have had the privilege of having Rabbi Skolnik as our spiritual leader. He has taken us through turbulent times of change with the assuredness of commitment and strength of conviction while meeting the challenges of the modern world. We know and trust that he will bring the same energy and reason to his new challenges as President of the Rabbinical Assembly. Rabbi, we wish you continued strength and success in your endeavor and stand ready to help in any way we can. Mazal Tov.